Welcome to this class on fluid mechanics. In this class, we will be deriving the momentum equation for a fluid. We have seen a glimpse of this when we derived the equation of hydrostatics. Now, a key part of this derivation is the stress tensor sigma ij. Now, recall what we had done and how we had dealt with the stress tensor. This, for the recap, you may also like to review the fourth lecture, lecture 4, where we talk in details. I'll just do a bit of recap. If we have this second order tensor sigma ij, which is sigma 11, sigma 12, sigma 13, sigma 21, sigma 22, sigma 23, sigma 31, sigma 32, sigma 33. So this is our second order tensor, and we divided this into two parts. And this we can do with any second order tensor. And to divide this into two parts, first we defined trace, which was equal to sigma 11 plus sigma 22 plus sigma 33 divided by 3. And what we said was, we divided this, we said sigma ij was equal to T by 3 delta ij plus ai plus what we have, let's use sigma ij, I've used consistent notation, so plus this term was sigma ij minus the stress part. Now this part, basically this looks like T by 3, T by 3, T by 3, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, like this. And this part is basically sigma 11 minus T by 3, sigma 22 minus T by 3, sigma 33 minus T by 3, and then sigma 12, sigma 13, sigma 21, sigma 23, sigma 31, sigma 32. Now this part, the first part, is called the isotropic part, and the second part, we didn't call this name, this is called the deviotropic part of the tensor. And one thing you will realize is the trace of the deviotropic part of the tensor this will always be 0, and you can verify this. This just goes by the way we have defined this. Now, in sigma ij, the isotropic part, which was equal to T by 3, we defined this as minus of pressure. That means pressure was defined as minus of sigma 11 plus sigma 22 plus sigma 33 divided by 3. So this thing, that pressure is like this, so this was obvious that for a static fluid where there is no deformation, sigma ij was equal to minus P times delta ij. Now, so that means what we have done is the deviotropic part of sigma ij. What is this deviotropic part? This is equal to sigma 11 plus P, sigma 12, sigma 13, sigma 21, sigma 22 plus P, sigma 23, sigma 31, sigma 32, and sigma 33 plus P. This part, what will happen is, this part of the stress tensor will be non-zero when the fluid moves and deforms. That means there is relative motion of fluid layers above one another. And this part, the second part, this is what we will refer to as the viscous stress, and we will call it tau ij. So this tau ij part is the part which occurs because the fluid is moving. So what we have is, we can write sigma ij is equal to minus p times delta ij plus tau ij. Now notice, in a moving fluid, there is no reason for pressure, for normal stresses to be equal, because the fluid element can now deform. So, for example, if we have a circular element to start with, it can change to an ellipsoidal element. If the forces are there which are pulling it like this, it could change. This is in a moving fluid. In a static fluid, the circular element will stay circular and with the same volume. So if this radius is r, this radius will also be r. In a static fluid, same shape, same volume, because there is no movement. But so therefore, in the static fluid, what we defined as pressure, this was the thermodynamic variable P, and which we said P was like rho of T, because this is what we are talking of is an equilibrium state. But in a moving fluid, for a general case, pressure P is just average of normal stresses. That means P is defined as minus of sigma 11 plus sigma 22 plus sigma 33 divided by 3. So this is the definition. And also now let's look at the second part of the viscous, of the tensor. This basically, as we said, this is arising because of the movement of the fluid and hence viscosity. So this is the viscous part of the stress tensor. Now, are there any properties of tau ij we could think of? Well, if you refer back to the lecture 4, we showed that tau ij, in general, in fact, we showed it for sigma ij, is a symmetric tensor. And this we got, if you recall, from the moment balance on an element. That means tau ij is equal to tau ji. Actually, what we had got was sigma ij is equal to sigma ji. This was derived in lecture 4. But since tau ij in the non-diagonal terms is the same as sigma ij, so this is what we have. Now, tau ij often may be referred to as the shear stresses, but recall, in tau ij, in addition to shear stresses, we also have normal stresses which are over and above the pressure term. So that's why I would rather call it viscous stresses, but in your solid mechanics course, tau ij will be referred to as the viscous stresses, as the shear stresses, sorry. Now the other thing, so this was one property of tau ij, and the second property of tau ij, you will realize tau 11 plus tau 22 plus tau 33 by definition of a David-Tropic tensor must be equal to 0. So these are the two properties which we have seen, and what we have done is that means, so now what we are trying to do is for a fluid, this we don't do in solids, we divide the stress tensor into two parts, minus P delta ij plus tau ij. So we will keep this in mind and we will come back to this bit later. Next, we move to the momentum equation. And momentum equation, if you look at it, is nothing but Newton's second law. And basically, we apply Newton's second law to an infinitesimal control volume. And when we do that, that means we move to a point, and that will give us the momentum equation for a fluid at a point. And we would expect this to be a differential equation. Now Newton's second law tells us sum of external forces is equal to m times a, if viewed from a inertial frame of reference. So now let's look at, if we are talking of, so now once again this is our fluid and we are looking at some infinitesimal volume delta V. So if we now try to look at external forces acting on this volume, the external forces are of two types, surface force and body force. So on a fluid element, when we see, so this is an entire fluid, we have picked up a volume here, and here we find that the external forces which will act on this volume will be either surface forces or the body forces. Now, the surface forces are expressed in terms of the stress tensor. So now this derivation which we are doing, we are using the general stress tensor sigma ij. So this is valid not just for a fluid, but it is also valid for any solid element also, because we are just using Newton's second law on a particular particle right now. So this is, and what we will do is, let's, to calculate force due to sigma ij on the volume, and to make this derivation more physical, what I'm going to do is I will take a square element. So we'll look at 2D and we will look at a rectangular element. Now, of course, if you recall in sigma ij, the first index is that of the direction of area, and the second index is that of the direction of force. So therefore, now this, we say this is delta x, this is delta y. Now let us try to find forces in the x direction due to sigma ij tensor. Due to the stress tensor, what are the forces in x direction on this rectangular element? So now at O, at origin, the stress tensor, we have sigma xx, sigma xy, and sigma yy. These are the values of the stress tensor at O. I'm not writing sigma yx because that is the same. So now what we do is at on the right face. So now let us look at all the faces. Let me mark them A, B, C, D. So let's try to find on surface AB. The stress tensor will be given by sigma xx plus partial sigma xx divided by partial sigma xx by partial x multiplied by delta x by 2. This will be the stress tensor here, and this is the stress tensor, stress sigma xx at AB. So the surface force on AB, this will be equal to sigma xx multiplied by the area. So we multiply this by the area. So this is the surface force in the x direction on AB. So this surface force Fsx on AB. Now on CD, Fsx on CD, if you write it in similar way, this will be sigma xx plus partial sigma xx by partial x multiplied by minus of delta x by 2 times delta y times 1. And now the force on AB acts in the plus x direction, force on CD acts in the minus x direction. That is the sign convention. So this is Fsx on CD. Now in addition, we also have Fsx on AD and CB. Why do these forces come? Well, these come because of the shear stress. Now, shear stress here, if I write on element AD, it will be in this direction. So this will be the shear stress on AD, and we multiply it by the area to get the force. And this is the shear stress on BC multiplied by the area. And this shear stress will be sigma yx, and this also will be sigma yx. So now let's work these out. So Fsx on AD will be equal to sigma yx plus, so I'm first expanding the stress tensor in a Taylor series, sigma yx by partial y times delta y by 2, and the area is delta x. And Fsx on CB, similarly this will be, so and this force will be in the plus I direction. This will be sigma yx minus partial sigma yx by partial y times let's put it plus here and let's put minus sign here, minus of delta y by 2, and this whole thing multiplied by delta x times 1. And this force acts in the minus x direction. So now when we take the net surface force, net Fx on this rectangular element, what I'm going to get is, it will in the plus x direction, it will be partial sigma xx by partial x times delta x delta y times 1, and plus partial sigma yx by partial y times delta y times delta x times 1. So this is the net Fsx on the volume. Well, this one which I have written is basically the dimension in the z direction. So this is the total surface force which we get on this face. Similarly, now you do a similar exercise for Fy, and this I will leave for you to do. The y forces, I'll just show it. There will be force due to sigma yy on this face. Then similarly, this will be the force due to sigma yy. So this is, now we are talking of the y direction. Now on this will be sigma xy. So force due to sigma xy has to be accounted, and this will be force due to sigma xy again. So these are all the forces, and once you do the net Fsy which you will get on this element, this will be equal to partial sigma xy by partial x plus partial sigma yy by partial y multiplied by delta x delta y times 1. So this is what we have, and this, in fact, I can probably write it as partial sigma xx by partial x plus partial sigma yx by partial y times delta y delta x times 1. So this is the total surface force on this. And now if we extend this to 3D, what we will get is the net surface force in the x direction. This will be equal to partial sigma xx by partial x plus partial sigma yx by partial y plus partial sigma zx by partial z times delta x delta y delta z. So now this is, we have taken a cuboidal control volume. This is just simply the extension. In the y direction, this will become partial sigma yx by partial x. This will be xy, sorry. So this is the same, but anyway, technically this will be xy. The direction is x, force direction is y, plus partial sigma yy by partial y plus partial sigma. Now the area is z, the force direction is y, divided by partial z delta x delta y delta z. And similarly, the surface force in the z direction, this will be partial sigma xz by partial x plus partial sigma yz by partial y plus partial sigma zz by partial z multiplied by delta x delta y delta z. So these are the net surface forces which are acting on the volume. Okay. Now, of course, delta x, delta y, delta z, I can write it as delta v, the volume. Now, the body forces on this control volume of delta v will be equal to mass times g. So this will be equal to rho dv times g, where g is the body force per unit mass. Okay. And so then if we apply Newton's law, what we will do is, let us represent this surface force which we have. The surface force, this term which we wrote in brackets, if we look at this Fsx, Fsy, Fsz, these are these 9 terms, this combination of these 9 terms. And what we'll do is, let us write surface force divided by delta x, delta y, delta z, and we use a compact notation. We will use divergence of sigma ij. Now that means this total partial sigma xx plus partial sigma yx plus this thing multiplied by I. So basically this term, divergence of sigma ij, represents I component, and then with the I component we have partial sigma xx by partial x plus partial sigma yx by partial y plus partial sigma zx by partial z. This is the j component, and this is the del dot sigma ij. This total term is written like this: partial sigma. This will be yx by again xy by partial y plus partial sigma yy by partial y plus partial sigma. Now this will be zy by partial z and plus k times partial sigma x plus partial sigma yz by partial y. Well, looks like very cumbersome, but this is the notation which we will use. The surface force divided by volume, this vector we will use as divergence of sigma ij. So now when we have this, so that means the surface force, we have written the body force, the surface force we will write it as del dot sigma ij times delta v. This is the body force. Now mass times, so now mass times acceleration will become rho times v delta v. This is the mass times acceleration. So now when we apply Newton's second law, what we get is, this gives us rho times a times delta v is equal to rho times g times delta v plus divergence of sigma ij times delta v, and this leads us to the relation rho a is equal to rho g plus divergence of sigma ij. And this is the equation of momentum balance at a point, and this is valid for any material, be it a solid, be it a fluid, anything. This is basically as good as Newton's second law. So the restrictions on this equation are the same as we have for Newton's second law, and the only restriction which I could think of is that acceleration has to be measured with respect to an inertial frame. This is what we have for a particle. Now this equation is also called Cauchy's equation. So this is the equation for momentum balance, and this is a very fundamental equation, and as I said, this is, now what we will do is, let's try to now write this for fluid element. Now in a fluid element, one of the things we have done is, if we look at sigma xx will be minus p plus tau xx. Sigma yx will be nothing but tau yx, and sigma zx will be nothing but tau zx. So now if I look at the x component of del dot tau ij, now this x component will be partial by partial x of sigma xx plus partial by partial y of sigma yx plus partial by partial z of sigma zx. So this will become equal to, now when I take the derivative of 6, so this becomes minus partial p by partial x plus partial tau xx by partial x plus partial tau yx by partial y plus partial tau zx by partial z. Where now tau, if you recall, these are the viscous stresses, and they include both the shear stresses and the normal part other than the isotropic part. So therefore what we can see is, if you this del dot sigma ij, if you write the I, j and k component, the I component as minus partial p by partial x, j component similarly will have minus partial p by partial y, and the k component will have minus partial p by partial z. So this del dot sigma ij actually becomes minus gradient of p plus divergence of tau ij, because all the other terms, these tau ij terms, are the same as the sigma ij terms. So therefore when we do this, what we get is rho times A is equal to minus grad P plus rho G plus del dot tau ij. So this then becomes the equation for a fluid element. Now what more can we do? Now there are two more things we will do. In today's class we will first look at the acceleration term. When we talk of a fluid particle, etc., then we have seen that we often, or the preferred mode is to express velocity as a field and not of the particle. If that is so, that means velocity is written as a function of four independent variables: x, y, z, t. We express the velocity field. Now, in terms of the velocity field, we have seen in one of the lectures before that acceleration is written as partial v by partial t plus v dot grad operating on v. So therefore, when I do this, what I will get is the momentum equation will now become rho times partial v by partial t plus v dot grad operating on v is equal to minus gradient of p plus rho g plus divergence of tau ij. So we have taken care of the left hand side and expressed this in terms of the field. Now physically, if we look at this term, at this equation, then all it says is the left hand side gives us the acceleration. In the right side, we have a force, that means acceleration of a particle is equal to sum of all the forces. Well, there is force due to pressure, force due to gravity or the body force if there are other body forces, and we have the forces due to viscous stresses. So sum of all these forces will be equal to the acceleration, mass times the acceleration. So this is what essentially the momentum equation becomes. Now the next step, and this is so far also you can say that if we do a similar trick in solid mechanics, then we can express an equation of solid also like this, which we generally don't do, but you could still say that. But now the next step which will come, that will be the differentiating step between a solid and a fluid. And what is this differentiating step? That is to express tau ij, the viscous stresses, as a function of V. Now in solid mechanics, tau ij is a function of deformation. But in fluids, tau ij is related to the rate of deformation, and that is where the difference comes. So now what we have to do is we have to express tau ij as a function of, because it is rate of deformation, we will show this will depend not on the velocity but on the gradients of velocity. And in a rudimentary form, we have done this as Newton's law of viscosity, where we only talked of the shear stress term. We expressed tau nt is equal to mu times dvt by dxn. This was a simple form of expressing shear stress as a function of the velocity gradients. Now we have to generalize this. This has to be now, terms have to be added to this, and we have to now see how tau ij can be related to the velocity gradient. And this relation of tau ij with the gradient of velocity, we will see in the next class. What we will do is we will look at this relation, and we will first try to see the velocity gradient, which I can, if it's a vector, if ui is the velocity vector, then the gradient of velocity in a general way can be expressed as dui by dxj, which means again I goes from 1 to 3 and j goes from 1 to 3. So this term will have 9 components, and we will relate dui by dxj to tau ij. And of course this will be an assumption, and this we will see. First we will see what these components of dui by dxj do to a fluid element. We will try to get a differentiating role of different parts, because dui by dxj means you'll have, if the ui is equal to ui plus vj, then partial ui by partial xj. In a 2D case, there will be basically there will be a term partial u by partial x, partial u by partial y, partial v by partial x, partial v by partial y. What do each of these terms do to a fluid element? And this is what we will study in the next class. So thank you very much.